Hello everybody, this is Bonnie Barker with Bonnie Bay Crochet, and today I have something very near and dear to my heart to share with you. This is an Easter themed throw that I am calling On a Hill Far Away, and the central motif is the three crosses of Golgotha, which represent the hill and upon which our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ was crucified outside of Jerusalem. Okay, and I know many of you are familiar with that story. I want to go ahead and I'll show other pictures right here of this particular throw, but I wanted to tell you some of the meaning that I tried to build into this as I designed the throw. So there's a lot that I could say about the meaning, but I'm going to try to just distill it down very simply so that you understand why I chose the stitches that I did. Of course, we have the three crosses in the center, and they tell the story of how Jesus he was God, became man, so that he could die for a debt that he didn't owe, to pay the debt that we couldn't pay. And in that debt, we believe, as Christians, was satisfied in the death of our Lord and Savior alone. Of course, we know he didn't stay dead, but he rose again in 3 days, and which is why we are able to celebrate such really a horrific death historically. There are also 3 rounds of the knurl stitch that I'm surrounding the cross motif with, as well as 2 rounds of the cable stitch. Now, I wanted that to represent, by going around this continually, that God has no beginning and he has no end. And also throughout, you're going to see the number 3 is very significant in the Christian faith for many reasons. One of which representing the Trinity, which is the union of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I also added the braided cables in and around the project, again, for the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, as God is 3 in 1. But I also couldn't help but think of how he is intertwined into our lives for those of us who believe, and just really make us so much stronger than what we would be by ourselves. Of course, I could say much more about that. I also added the arrow stitch all the way around, going in a particular direction, and well, framed by the cables again to bring continuity to the design. But the arrow just reminds me of when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. And he was very emphatic about that, and I really do take that to heart on a personal level. Finally, we have the Celtic weave, which is one of my favorite stitches, but I love the way it's all interwoven, and it doesn't seem to not have a beginning or an end. And again, to represent some qualities of God being infinite, omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent. So, and then finally, I am surrounding the entire project with a crown motif. He may have worn a crown of thorns here, for that's all that our world could really offer him, which is really a sad testimony of the condition of the human race. But the hope is that even though he wore the crown of thorns for us to die for our sins, he now sits at the right hand of God the Father, and he is wearing a crown that is beyond our imagination and is just adorned in heavenly crowns. And it reminds me of the song that we often sing in church called Crown Him with Many Crowns. And this throw is surrounded by just that, by many, many crowns. So I hope you can enjoy this with me, and maybe even perhaps use this as a meditation as we prepare for the resurrection day, Easter day. But honestly, I believe this can be enjoyed anytime throughout the year. Well, come along with me and I'll show you what you're going to need. For this project, I'm going to be using Paint Box Yarns Simply Aran. And the number that I will be using will be appearing right across the bottom of your screen. Each of these balls of yarn is a number 4 or Aran or worsted weight yarn containing 100 grams or 3.5 ounces, 184 meters or 201 yards, and these are 100% acrylic. And I will have a link in the video description below where you can purchase this yarn should you like to. I'm also recommending that you consider purchasing this pattern so that you can get the diagram for what we're about to do. This will help you to keep track of the rows that we are working, as well as when to crochet which stitches as we crochet these 3 crosses for the center feature of this throw. The first thing we're going to do is start with our trusty slip knot and a starting chain of 45. Once you have your starting chain of 45, we're going to start in the second chain from the hook, and we're going to work our double stitch just like this. We're going to work a single crochet in that first stitch and then a double crochet in the next. Single crochet in the next, double crochet in the next stitch, and we're going to alternate that all the way across the row. Single crochet followed by a double crochet. At the end of the row, we're going to end with a double crochet. So this is what you should have all the way across. For those of you who are interested in the foundation chain, please don't bother for this project because we're going to be working a perimeter border around this, and the chain is going to be completely covered in the end, so it really doesn't matter. Okay, so now I'm going to turn, and the next 3 rows, rows 2 through 4, are going to be worked the same way. We're going to chain 1, single crochet in that first stitch, which should be a double crochet, and then double crochet in the next stitch, which is a single crochet from the last row. So we're making a stitch in the opposite. In other words, if it was a tall double crochet, we work a single crochet, and for the single crochet we work a double crochet. This just produces a lovely texture, and I think it's going to be beautiful for this project. So go ahead and work 3 rows just like this, rows 2 through 4, and when you get to the end, you're going to end it the same way. We're going to work a double crochet in that last stitch. So after completing the first 4 rows, which is just worked in pattern stitch, we're going to begin row number 5, and I've gone ahead and counted the number of blocks that there are, which represent stitches, the pattern stitch that we're using, which again is the single crochet, double crochet alternating. We're going to first work 9 of those stitches in pattern stitch, and then we're going to work 3 front post double crochets, followed by 8 stitches in pattern stitch, then 4 stitches in front post double crochet, 8 stitches in pattern stitch, and then 4 more stitches in the front, 3 more stitches. So it's 3, 4, and 3 on the front post double crochets where you see the blue boxes, and then again 9 stitches following that section. So let's go ahead and do that together. So we start with a chain 1, and we're going to work 9 stitches in pattern stitch, starting with that single crochet and then followed by the double crochet. Make sure that you are alternating these. I've caught myself more than once just defaulting to single crochet alone. See, how many have I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now the base for the smaller cross, we're going to work 3 post stitches, and we're going to do it just like this. 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to work in the next 8 stitches in pattern stitch. Again, remembering to alternate the single crochets and double crochets. Okay, now we're going to make the base for the large cross in the center, and we're going to work 4 front post double crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we're going to work 8 stitches in pattern stitch. Oops. Okay, let me make sure that that is 8 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we work 3 front post double crochets. And just like that. And then we should have 9 stitches remaining. It's stitch number 8 and stitch number 9. So this is what you should have after completing row number 5. For row number 6, we're going to turn, chain 1, and again work in pattern stitch over those 9 stitches. When you get to the post stitches, just continue the pattern of the double stitch. So we have a double crochet, a single crochet, a double crochet. Just work that across, and then a single crochet. So just work that all the way across the row. Even when you get to the post stitches, just continue to alternate the double crochet, single crochet as you go across. So this is what you should have after completing 6 rows. And let's look at the chart again. So we've completed 6 rows here. Now for row 7, it looks an awful lot like row number 5, but I'm going to work it a little bit differently because we're going to work the post stitches as treble crochets, front post trebles, and we're going to connect them into the front post double crochets down here so that they're elongated and connected. So I'm going to show you how to work this row, and once I do, you'll know how to work everything from row 7 through row 18. But let me go ahead and work row 7 with you, and then I'm going to give you a larger assignment. So to start row 7, we work a chain 1, and we work the double stitch, which is the single crochet and then double crochet. So work that over the first 9 stitches. After working those 9 stitches, we are now going to work front post treble crochets over the 3 stitches 2 rows below. So let's go ahead and work 1. These are front post trebles. 2 and 3. Okay. After we do that, we're going to make sure that we skip 3, 1, 2, 3 that are behind us, and then we resume with the double stitch for 8 more stitches. After those 8 stitches, working single crochet, double crochet, we come to the central cross, and we're going to work 4 front post trebles, again 2 rows below. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just like that. After that, we make sure we skip 4 stitches behind 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we resume with the double stitch, starting with that single crochet in that double crochet. And if you're not sure which stitch to start with, if it's a double crochet, work a single crochet. If it's a single crochet, work a double crochet, just the opposite of what you see. And it is important to count in between, because it would be very easy to add additional stitches, and you don't want to do that. Okay, so I should have 8 stitches. Let's make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it's time for 3 more front post trebles with the stitches right below. 1, 2, and 3. And then we have, we'll skip 3, 1, 2, 3 behind, and then now we're on to 9 stitches remaining. So go ahead and work those 9 stitches. This is what you should have after completing 7 rows, and you should be able to see the bases that will form the crosses very clearly at this point. Now I'm going to give you an assignment. Okay, we're going to work rows 8 through 18. Let me show these to you on the chart. Okay, so we just completed row 7. Let's go ahead and check that off. It's a good idea. I encourage you to print this off and to check them as you go. It just makes it a lot easier to keep track. Now, what we did on row 7 is the same thing that we're going to do on row 9, 11, 13, 15, and 17. Rows 8, every other row with the back side facing, rows 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 are simply going to be working in pattern stitch all the way across the row. So go ahead and work rows 8 through 18. If you're not sure what to do for rows 7, the rows with the post stitches, feel free to back up and you can re-watch this row again. This is what you should have after completing 18 rows. Now we need to look at the chart for the next few rows. So we've completed through row 18. Now for row 19, we're going to work 4 stitches in pattern stitch, and then we're going to work 13 stitches as front post trebles, and then we're going to work 3 stitches in pattern stitch, 4 stitches in front post trebles, 3 stitches pattern stitch, and then another 13 stitches in front post trebles, and 4 stitches in pattern stitch. So that is going to be row 19. So let's go ahead and work that. So let's go ahead and start with a chain 1. This again is row 19, and we're going to work 4 stitches in pattern stitch, okay, so now we're going to work front post trebles, and we're going to work 5 of them before we get to these posts. So let's count from over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first one is going to be right here. Let's work a front post treble. Two, 3, 4, and 5. after working those, we're going to work over the next 3 stitches. One, 2, 3. So working those stitches. 1. Again, be sure that we're working 2 rows down. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's pause and take a look to see that that looks somewhat even, and it does. Okay, so after working those stitches, we're going to work in the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. And now we're going to work front post double crochets over those next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is on the central cross. After that, we're going to work in the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. And let's just count backwards from this side for the next 5. 1, okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's go ahead with those front post trebles. 1, 2, and I want to also say that this is really important to follow the chart. It's really easy to get confused on which stitches are which as you crochet over this. So do be sure that you check and count constantly on this so that the numbers come out accurately. Okay, so after that we have the 3 post stitches here of the main beam. Okay, and then we have 5 more. 1, again 2 rows down, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we have 4 stitches to finish out the row in the pattern stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's take a look. This is after completing 19 rows. So you see that the smaller crosses are starting to be completed. Okay, so now row 20 is going to be worked with the back side facing, and we're just going to work in pattern stitch all the way across. Make sure on this long section that you're alternating single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, just like you've been doing all the way across. And for row 21, it's actually a repeat of what we just did here with row number 20. I'm sorry, with row number 19. So 21 is the same. I'm going to go ahead and show this to you on the chart. Okay, so we're down here. We've just worked this row. So we're going to work the row 20, which is the double stitch all the way across in pattern stitch, and then row 21 is the same that we just worked. So go ahead and work the next 3 rows, again all in pattern stitch, and then 21, which is the same as what we just did, and then another row of pattern stitch. All right, I've just finished working row number 21, And I'm going to work row 22 with you because there's something special I want you to do when working behind the crossbar on each side. So I'm going to go ahead and show that to you. So again, this is row 22. We're going to work pattern stitch and those first 4 stitches. Okay, so now there are 5. Let's go ahead and turn around and look at this again. There are 5 stitches here, and then there are 3 stitches that we're going to work in pattern stitch, and then 5 more stitches over here that make up the cross beam, and the same on this side. So what I want you to do as we're working these stitches is just work in the front loop only of these 5 stitches, and then work through both loops on the main post or the main column, and then the next 5 we're just going to work in the front loop only, and I'll show you what I mean by that as I work this with you. So for the next 5 stitches, and we're going to start with a single crochet. We work single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, and then a single crochet. And if you're not sure, you can look back. So the next stitch, let's go ahead and turn it this way. So we have worked across here, and it's just, I'm going to go ahead and take this out. So you can see that it just gives it more definition here on that cross beam. So now we're going to work in the next 3 stitches, just working through both loops, because we're going to continue to work that beam as we go forward. So we're going to work a double crochet, a single crochet, and then a double crochet. And now for the next 5 stitches, we work in the front loop only. Single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, and single crochet. And then after that, we return to those 3 stitches in the pattern stitch, and let me just turn this to show you why we're doing it this way. You can see how this line helps to give this cross beam a little more definition in the work. Now continuing to work over the center cross, the main beam, we just continue working through both loops in pattern stitch. And over the next 3 stitches as well. And then now we're working over the next 5 stitches, working only in the front loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the next 3 stitches, which are the main post, we work through both loops. 1, 2, 3, and then again through only the front loop for the next 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then we finish out the row with those 4 stitches in patterned stitch. And that ends row 22. And you can see what we have after this. All right, let's take a look at our chart again. Also be sure to check off where you are. It just makes it so much easier. Now we're going to work rows 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28. And these are all the same as what we worked down here. So now for row 23, we're going to be working 9 stitches in pattern stitch, 3 stitches front post trebles, 8 stitches in pattern stitch, 4 stitches front post trebles, 8 stitches, 3 front post trebles, and then 9 stitches. And again, rows 24 and 26 are just working in pattern stitch all the way across. The only thing that's going to be different when we get to row 27, over these 3 stitches and these 3 stitches, we're going to work in the front loops only as we work row 28. All right, so make sure these 3 stitches you work in the front loop only when you're working the row 28, which is with the backside facing. This is what you should have after completing 28 rows. So both of the smaller crosses should be complete, and notice that I only worked in the front loops with when the backside was facing, so that you can see the loops on top for a little extra definition. Okay, so let's take a look at the chart again. I think it's starting to get easier. So we have completed through row 28, which is this row right here on the chart. So for row 29, we're going to work 20 stitches in pattern stitch, 4 front post trebles, and then 20 stitches again in pattern stitch. And then the row that comes after that, row 30, will just be pattern stitch all the way across the row. So go ahead and work rows 29 and 30. All right, this is what you should have after completing 30 rows. Okay, now for row 31, we're going to begin the large cross beam up here. So now we're about to begin row 31, which again, we're going to be working this 3 times, or at least in the next 6 rows, this will be worked 3 of the 6 times. So we're going to have 10 stitches and then 24 front post trebles and then 10 stitches, and then row 32 will just be in pattern stitch, across. 33 is the same as 31. It'll be easier because you'll be able to see the stitches that you connect into. So again, it's going to be 10 pattern stitches and then 24 front post trebles and then 10 stitches, and again just pattern stitch all the way across row 34, and then 35 is again a repeat of these previous rows, and then 36 is another row of just working in pattern stitch. So go ahead and work rows 31 through 36. So this is what you should have completed after 36 rows. On that last row, again, you should have worked only in the front loop on the 10 stitches here, worked through both loops in the 4 stitches that were the 4 central parts of that first beam, and then in the front loop only on these other 10 stitches, just the way we did here and here on these other crosses. Okay, so now let's just take a look at our diagram here. So we've completed 36 rows. So now 37 through 48 are going to be very simple. We're going to work 20 stitches in pattern stitch, 4 front post treble crochets, and then 20 stitches in pattern stitch, followed by a row of just pattern stitch all the way across. So go ahead and work those 2 rows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times And then the last 3 rows will just be 3 additional rows of pattern stitch, and that will take you through row 51. So go ahead and work those final rows. This is what you should have after completing those 51 rows. All right, so the central part is complete. Now we just need to do the perimeter round. Okay, so now we're ready to work the first perimeter round, and from this point on we will be working rounds. We're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn 90 degrees to work along the row ends. Again, front side is facing. Now what I'm going to have you do, there are 51 rows. So I'm going to work 58 stitches evenly along the row ends. So as we do that, sometimes you're going to need to work 1 row end, 1 stitch in the row end, and sometimes 2. So this is mathematically the way I figured out that I'm going to do this. Okay, so I've turned 90 degrees. I'm going to work 1 double crochet in that first row end, and then 1 in the next. And I'm going to do this, that's 3, and then I'm going to work 1 in the next, 4, 5, and then I'm going to work an extra one here for that 6th, and then I'm going to continue. So about every 6 to 7 stitches I'm going to add an extra stitch by working 2 single crochets on at the row end with a double crochet, but only about after every 6th stitch or so that I can distribute these evenly. So I'm going to go ahead and work this till I get 58 stitches evenly across. So this is what it looks like after having worked those 58 stitches evenly across. I've worked that last stitch in the same place where the foundation chain was. I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to turn 90 degrees. I'm going to work 1 stitch in that same place where the last stitch was worked at the end of that side, and I'm going to work 1 stitch in each stitch on the foundation chain, and of course we should have 44 stitches after we work all the way across. So after working those 44 stitches across that foundation chain, chain 2, turn 90 degrees and work 58 stitches evenly across the row ends, with that first single crochet being in the same place as the last single crochet of that side in order to form the corner with that chain 2. So go ahead and work those 58 stitches across the row ends, and then chain 2, and then 1 single crochet in each stitch across the top, and I will show you the join at the end of the round. And by the way, this is round number 1. At the end of round 1, we're going to chain 2, and we're going to join with a slip stitch to the very first stitch of this first perimeter round. Okay, just like that. Now we're not going to turn, we're going to continue on with another round of single crochet. We're going to chain 1, and in the same place where we joined, go ahead and work a single crochet in each stitch all the way around. When you get to the chain 2 corners, we're going to work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in each corner, and then we're going to join again with the chain 2. After we work in the chain 2 corner, we'll join with a slip stitch to the first stitch of the round, and I will show you that and what follows after these two, after this particular round. So at the end of this round, we're going to work a chain 2 corner with the single crochet, chain 2, and another single crochet. Now we're going to do something a little bit different. We're not going to join with a slip stitch to the entire corner or to that first stitch of the round. Instead, we're going to go right in to working round number 3, which is going to be the first round of the low front ridge. In this round, we're only going to work in the front loop of the stitch, and I'll show you how to do that. But before we get started, you're going to need to get some stitch markers. So I'm going to go ahead and get 4 of these. And what we're going to do with these stitch markers before we even begin this round is we're going to mark all of the corners. So go ahead and put a stitch marker in every chain 2 corner of this square. This is very important. This will make life so much easier when working the second round of this particular stitch, which can be a little bit challenging. All right, so this is going to save a lot of time. All right, and if you don't have stitch markers, you can use, small strands of contrasting color yarn, or even a leftover earring that may not have a match, or even if you have a matching pair that you don't like to wear necessarily, and if they need to be the kind that actually close, those come in quite handy, but as long as they're removable. Okay, so round 3, which is round 1 of the low front ridge, we're going to work a slip stitch just like this in the front loop only, all the way across the row, and I'll show you what to do when we get to the chain 2 corners, because we are going to skip the chain 2 corners on this particular round, but that's okay because this round really doesn't matter as far as the stitch count goes. It's what happens the round after this, which would be on round 4, where the stitch count continues to increase. This is mostly just surface stitching on this particular round. Okay, as we come to the first corner, and this, by the way, is how all the corners should be worked. I'm working again only in the front loop of that last stitch along the side, and then I'm going to skip the chain 2 corner, and I'm going to go right into the front loop of the next stitch along the other side and just continue working. Okay, so you can see why it's important to have this stitch marker, because when we come around for the next round, we're going to be working in the remaining loop and in the chain 2 corners. Okay, this is just a nice little surface design that helps to frame our center subject. Okay, I'm going to stop here just for a second, and you can see the way it curves around just like that. So go ahead and continue all the way around, and I will show you how this joins in the end. After working this low front ridge round all the way around, this is the last single crochet we worked of the previous round. So what we're going to do, we're going to just join with a slip stitch there. We're going to chain 1. Now we are going to turn, and this is where we start working in the spaces with the stitch markers. So right away we're going to go into the low front ridge round 2, and I'm going to go ahead and take this stitch marker out now that I know where I need to work, and we're going to work a chain 2, or rather a single crochet, chain 2, and a single crochet corner in that space. Now in the remaining loops from these single crochets, we're going to work a single crochet all the way around. And just remember that when you come to the chain 2, where the stitch markers are, that's where we work the single crochet chain 2 single crochet, worked in the entire chain 2 space, and then we go back again to working only in the remaining loop, which again is the front loop as these stitches face us at this point. So go ahead and work this round, and I will show you how to join. And let me just take a look, and I'll show you the nice ridge that it forms on the front side. As I finish up this round, I wanted to show you how to finish this up. So this is the last stitch that we can see, but there was another stitch here. I wanted to make sure that you get to this stitch. This is where we joined back behind here. I know this may be a little confusing, but do make sure that you have 62 stitches along these long sides, and that is including the chain 2s here. So then we join with a slip stitch just like that, and now we're going to also slip stitch to the corner. And let's turn, and let's just take a quick look at how this frames the 3 crosses, I think, in a very beautiful way. Okay, so now that we've completed 4 rounds, you should have 48 stitches along the short sides and 62 stitches along the long sides. So it's going to be kind of important going forward as we work various stitches. So now that we've chained 1, let's go ahead and work a single crochet in that chain 2 space. That's very important. And we're going to work a single crochet in the next stitch. You can always check behind the work here in case you're wondering exactly where that stitch should be. It's right here, so you can see that last stitch that we worked. Okay, so we're going to make our first cable. We're going to chain 3, skip the next 2 stitches, single crochet in the next stitch. Now we're going to turn to work in those 3 chains. 1 single crochet in each of those chains, slip stitch in that next stitch, which happens to be a single crochet. Now I'm going to bring my yarn around to the back so I don't have to keep flipping the whole work around. Now we're going to pull this cable down, and working in those 2 remaining stitches, we're going to work single crochets in each of those stitches, and that's what we're going to do all the way across, and I'll show you how to deal with the corners when we get there. Chain 3, I'll do this again, skip the next 2 stitches, single crochet in that next stitch, turn to work in the chains, and then just work along the side of those chains. 1 single crochet in each of those stitches, and then in the next stitch, which is a single crochet, slip stitch, and then again bring your yarn to the back side, and let's pull this cable down in front of us, and it reveals those 2 stitches that we skipped, single crochet in each of those. So if you've never done that before, you can back this up and watch this again. And if you need additional stitch support, look in the video description below. I'll try to put that stitch video for the stitches in this throw so that you can watch those. So go ahead and work that to the first corner. Now I'm coming to my first corner. I'm going to go ahead and work a single crochet in that remaining single crochet. And then we work the chain 2 corner with a single crochet, chain 2, and a single crochet worked in the same space. After working this all the way around, I'm going to single crochet in that last stitch, and then we come to the corner. I'm going to work 1 single crochet since we already have the other single crochet right there, chain 2, and then I'm going to join with a slip stitch to that first stitch of the round, And let's go ahead and take a look at what we have here. Okay. So just for the record, you should have 15 cables worked on the top and on the bottom. Along the sides, you should have 20 cables on both sides. Now we are going to turn. We've already joined, so let's go ahead and turn. Now the back side is facing us. We are going to chain 1, and we're first going to work that corner. We're going to work a single crochet, chain 2, and a single crochet in that chain 2 corner. And this is how you're going to work behind the cables. Okay, so the stitches behind the cables are right here, but we have 2 stitches to work in before that. 1, 2. All right, now we're working behind the cables, and what we're going to do is we're going to work 2 single crochets behind that first stitch, and then 1 single crochet behind that next stitch. Again, this is working behind the cables. I'll do that again for you. 2 single crochets in that next space, 1 in the next, and you do need to pull back the cable just a little bit to see that other stitch. So I'll do this again. 2 single crochets and then 1. So let me turn to show you what we're doing. So essentially, once you get past any extra stitches at the beginning and at the end of the row, when you're working behind the cables, you're going to be putting 3 single crochets behind each of these cables. If you can do that, then we're going to maintain our stitch count, and I'll tell you those numbers at the end of the round. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and work across, and then I'll show you what to do once you go down this long side and show you the next turn. After working all the way across behind the cables, we have 2 stitches to complete. 1, 2, and then now we're going to work the chain 2 corner. We work a single crochet, chain 2, and another single crochet to turn this corner. And across the short side, you should have a total of, and this is including the single crochets in the chain 2 corners, you should have a total of 51 single crochets as you work across the short side, or the top and bottom of the square. So we're going to turn. Now we're working along the long side. We just have 1 extra stitch here, which is a standalone single crochet, and now we are working behind the cables. We're going to work 2 single crochets in that first stitch, and then 1 in the next. Okay, so go ahead and work that to the next corner, and I will show you what I have and give you the other stitch count. So we're going to work the extra stitches after working behind all those cables. So we have 2 of those standalone stitches, and then we have 1 going into that chain 2 space. Let's go ahead and chain 2, turn, and we'll work that extra single crochet there. Okay, across the long end, you're going to have 65 stitches. So go ahead and work the rest of the way around the square, and then we'll go on to the next rounds. We get to the end of the row, and there is only 1 stitch here, and if you're in doubt, you can always look at the front side and see that 1 stitch is left there. So let's work that. So we come to the end of the row and we join with a slip stitch. Go ahead and chain 1, and we're going to turn. And so this is how this stitch is looking. I hope you enjoy this. This is one of my favorite cables of all times, really, to work on these projects. Okay, now we're going to work the 2 rows of the low front ridge, just like we did here. We're going to work it in the round, or around the square, where we skip the chain 2 corners. So we need to go ahead and put our stitch markers back into these chain 2 corners. So now that I've added a stitch marker to all the chain 2 corners. We're ready to begin. So I'm going to just show you the beginning of this row. Okay, we're going to skip that first stitch and we're going to just work a slip stitch. Remember, working only in the front loop all the way around. And as you get to the corners, remember, we're going to work a slip stitch in the last stitch along the side. We're going to skip the chain 2 corner entirely, and then we will go to the next stitch over here, working those in the front loops only. And we can get away with doing this because this is not a row that increases the stitch count. It just continues it along. Actually, it has nothing to do with the stitch count. It's more of a surface decoration like this is, but it's the row that's worked after that. And I will show that to you clearly again because I understand this is a little bit tricky to work it this way. So I'll show you how to connect this at the very end of the round and how to turn and then work the second row that follows this in the low front ridge. All right, I've worked this all the way around. I'm going to skip the last corner and I'm going to work a slip stitch in that chain space just like that. And let's chain 1, and now we're going to turn. The back side is facing us, and the first thing we're going to do, there we go, is we're going to work in the chain 1 space that we've marked with our stitch marker. So let's go ahead and we're going to work a single crochet, a chain 2, and another single crochet. And we can go ahead, we could remove that stitch marker. I'll just leave it there for now. And so for every chain 2 corner, we're going to work the single crochet, a chain 2, and a single crochet. And now working only in the remaining loop, we're going to single crochet in each stitch all the way around. And again, when you come to the next chain 2 corner, you're going to, work in the entire chain 2 space there. All right, so let's go ahead and just work this all the way around. After working this all the way across, we're going to join with a slip stitch to that first stitch of the round and go ahead and slip stitch to the chain 2 corner, and then we're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn that and give you an idea of how this border is looking. All right, we're not done yet. We've got quite a bit to this particular border. So after we've turned, okay, so let's go ahead and move. We're going to move our stitch markers in just a minute. Okay, so now we have the front side facing. We're going to go ahead and work a corner in this space with a single crochet, chain 2, and a single crochet. Okay, and let's go ahead and put our stitch marker in the corner. So this round is going to be easy. We are just going to work 1 stitch in each stitch all the way around. And as you begin that row, let's just make sure that we didn't skip any stitches. Yep, we're good. So go ahead and work single crochets all the way around. When you get to the chain 2 corners, which appear here, go ahead and work let me go ahead and replace. I will take this stitch marker out, and once I complete this chain 2, I will replace it. So we're going to just work single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in each chain 2 corner all the way around, and I'll show you what to do next. This is actually the foundation round for the knurl stitch, also known as the reverse single crochet. At the end of this round, we're just going to join with a slip stitch to that very first single crochet. Now we're going to begin the knurl stitch, spelled K-N-U-R-L, It has several other names, two of which I can think of off the top of my head. One is the reverse single crochet and the other is the crab stitch. And this is the way we're going to work that. We're only going to work in the front loop of these stitches, and we're going to work the opposite direction. If you're looking at the right-handed video, we're going to be now crocheting for this round only from left to right. And if you're watching the left-handed video, it would be from right to left. Okay, so, and make sure you still have these stitch markers in those corners because we're going to need them. Okay, so we're going to chain one, and we're going to start working in that very first stitch to the right of the hook. Okay, so we're going to go up into that stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through two. In the next stitch, up, pull a loop, yarn over, pull through two. Punch up. Sometimes it helps to think of just punching up into that next stitch, yarn over, pull through. So we're working the single crochet in reverse. So go ahead and work this to the next corner, and just to prep you for what we're going to be doing, we are going to be doing just like we did for the low front ridge. We're going to completely skip this corner. We are going to work in the front loop of this stitch and in this stitch, and we're just going to continue this around. But I'll show you that first turn, and I will also show you the join at the end of this round. This is a bit more of a challenging stitch. I don't want you to fear this, but it's also a very beautiful stitch, as you can see here, where it just leaves some amazing surface decor for your projects. And it's also a great joining stitch if you're ever using projects that join squares. This is every bit as good as anything I have ever used, only better because it leaves a beautiful surface texture. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and work these to the next corner. I've now come to the first corner, and I just wanted to give you a good explanation as to how to do this. Make sure that you have a stitch marker in that chain 2 that we're going to skip, so it doesn't get lost into oblivion on the next round. Okay, so I'm working the knurl stitch, and we have one left right here, so I'm going to go ahead and work that stitch. We're skipping the chain 2 corner, and we're going right to this next stitch. Just like that. So this corner, yes, it will be somewhat rounded as you go around the corner. Then we turn 90 degrees, and we just keep a going. Let's try that again. There we go. So let me pause and let you see how that corner is turned. And again, the chain 2 is marked with that stitch marker, so we can easily work in this on the next round. We come to the end of this round. I've worked in that last stitch before the chain 2 corner, and then there's one stitch in front of the chain 2 corner, and we're going to go ahead and work this one, and then we're going to join with a reverse slip stitch just like this, and go ahead and pull that kind of taut. Now we're going to do a chain 1, and we're not going to turn. We're going to go directly into the chain 2 space, and we're going to form a corner with a single crochet, chain 2, and another single crochet, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move the stitch marker because we are going to be needing these for the next few rounds. Okay, and then what we're doing with this round is we're simply working in the remaining loop. So we're just working in that remaining loop. Okay, so go ahead and work this all the way around. When you get to the chain 2 spaces, work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in the chain 2 space. And then once you've done that and gone all the way around, we are going to join with a slip stitch to the first stitch of the round, and I will show that to you when I get to that point. Okay, so now we are ending round number 11, and we're going to join with a slip stitch to the first stitch of the round, which is right here. I'm going to join just like that. And before I proceed, let me give you some stitch counts along the short ends of this rectangle. You should have 57 stitches, and that's including the chain 2 stitches that I'm just about to crochet in just a second. And then along the long side, you should have a total of 71 stitches. Okay, this is what you should have after completing 11 rounds. We are now going to repeat rounds 10, which is the round using the knurl stitch in the opposite direction, and then row 11, which is the single crochets that we just finished. We're going to do this twice more. So I'm going to go ahead and start you on round 12. I'm going to chain 1, and then again working the opposite direction. The first stitch that we're going to work is right here. So let's go ahead and find that stitch. That's the trickiest thing of all. Okay, and then again working in the front loop only, work that knurl stitch all the way around, followed by the round 11, or a repeat of round 11. If you need help in how I connected these, you can go look at the bottom of your screen. I'll put a little time mark where round 10 begins. So go ahead and complete rounds 12, 13, 14, and 15, where again that's a repeat of rounds 10 and 11 2 more times. Okay, so now to start round 16, let's go ahead and slip stitch to that chain 2 corner, and let's go ahead and chain 1, and we're going to turn. We're not going to work in that corner. So after that chain 1, we're going to start working single crochets across. But before we do, let's take a look at the front side facing to see where those stitches are going to be. Okay, so the first stitch is going to be here. Okay, right here. It's going to come in here, and then the next stitch is going to be over here. This is the join, so I just wanted to make sure that we're not adding stitches unnecessarily in there. So if you work your first stitch and you're not sure, you can turn, and yes, I got that one. Okay, and then the next one is here. Okay, so go ahead and work single crochets in each stitch. When you get to the chain 2 corners, you're going to work a single crochet, chain 2, and a single crochet in each corner for this particular round. So go ahead and do that. At the end of round 16, we're going to work in that chain 2 corner. We're going to work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and then we're going to join with a slip stitch to the first stitch of the round, and then we're going to turn our work around with the front side facing. Go ahead and chain 1, and let's go ahead. Let me go ahead and explain what we're going to do. Okay, so now let me explain visually where we're going from here. We just completed 16 rounds. So now for rounds 17 through 22, we're going to repeat rounds 3 through 8. So that would be low front ridge rounds 1 and 2, cable rounds 1 and 2, and then again low front ridge rounds 1 and 2. We're going to work those around. Now you are going to have different number of cables. Obviously you're going to have more, and I will give you those numbers and how that works out once I complete that section. So right now go ahead and work rounds 17 through 22, and I'll go ahead and start you off on this. Since we are skipping the chain 2, let me go ahead while I'm thinking of it, and I'm going to put that stitch marker back in, and make sure that you have one in each chain 2 corner so that working this is going to go well for you. So now as we go around, so let's go ahead and start with a slip stitch in that first stitch, and then we're going to work slip stitches, skipping that chain 2 corner, and just work slip stitches all the way around, working in the front loop only. And then we will connect this, and then of course we will work in that chain 2 space for the round that follows it. So after having worked the row 1 of the low front ridge all the way around, I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the first stitch, which is right here. Okay, then we're going to do a chain 1, and then we are going to turn to have the back side facing. So notice that we're going to work the chain 2 corner at the end of this round and not at the beginning. So we're going to go ahead and work in each of these stitches, and the first stitch is right down here, so you don't want to omit that stitch. And then the next stitch is right here because this is the join. All right, and then we're going to work those single crochets worked in that remaining loop right that you see here all the way around, and just like before, but just to be clear, when we get to the chain 2 corner, make sure you work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in each chain 2 corner. All right, and then after we do that, I will show you the join and the beginning of the round for the cable stitches. At the end of round 18, we're going to work that corner with a single crochet, chain 2, and another single crochet. I'm going to go ahead and move my stitch marker again to the current chain 2 space, and now we join with a slip stitch to that first stitch of the round, and then we're going to turn. Let me just say, if you're off by 1 stitch here or there, please don't make a big deal out of it and start ripping everything out and starting from the beginning. You can make that up easily by skipping a stitch or just not worrying about it right now, okay? I just want to put your heart at ease. It's okay if we have 1 extra or 1 fewer. It's not the end of the world on this particular design. We can get back on track with this next round. Okay, so now for round 19, we're going to work cable row 1. Now that we're going to begin round 19, let's go ahead and start from the corner. And what we're going to do is we're just going to slip stitch our way. Notice I did not chain 1 at this point. Slip stitch to that chain 2 corner, and then we're going to work a chain 1 and then work that corner. Single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and let's go ahead and move our stitch marker faithfully. Although it's not going to be as much of a problem this round, but the rounds following it will be. So now we're going to begin working the cables. I'll just give you a little refresher. We start with a single crochet, chain 3, skip 2 stitches, single crochet, and that next stitch. Then we turn to work in those chains, 1 single crochet in each of those chains, slip stitch, and that next stitch, and we bring the yarn to the back, and then pulling down that cable, we work single crochets in the 2 stitches that we just skipped earlier, and then chain 3, skip 2 stitches, and then we do it all over again. All right, let me go ahead and give you some more stitch counts for this round. You should have 26 cables along the long ends and 21 cables along the short ends. Okay, that does not include the extra stitches that you're going to have worked into the corners, but generally that information is really what you need the most, and that should hopefully be very helpful. This row ends by working another single crochet, and then with a slip stitch we're going to join to that first stitch of the round, which was crocheted into that chain 2 corner. All right, so like I said before, you have 21 cables across the short ends, and then you do have one additional single crochet in that corner there on that end, and 1, 2 on that end. So you really have 3 additional single crochets in addition to those cables along the short ends, and along the long ends you're going to have 26 cables with 1 additional single crochet in that corner and 1 additional single crochet in the other corner. So now we're going to slip stitch to the chain 2 corner, chain 1, and we are going to turn to work the back side of these cables. Now, like I said before, we had 2 stitches here, and if you're not sure, because we've worked the slip stitches, it can be a little confusing from the back side. You can always check the front side. So we're going to work in 2 single crochets before we reach the cables. Let's go ahead and do that. 1, 2, and now as we work behind each cable, just like we did before, I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way. We're going to work 2 single crochets followed by 1 single crochet, and we're going to work that all the way around. 2 single crochets and then 1 single crochet, and then as you get to the end of each side, as you see these extra stitches, so you're going to work an additional single crochet here, and then when you get to the corner we're going to do like we've been doing, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. So go ahead and work that row all the way around. At the end of this round, which is round 20, which is also round 2 of the cable stitch, let me show you what we've done here. We've worked a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in that turning chain where that stitch marker was located, and then we're going to join with a slip stitch to the first stitch of the round. And let's go ahead and we are going to turn. So let's take a look at the front side again, particularly at the border that we're focused on right here. So we've turned, and now we're looking at the border. This is after 20 rounds, and let me give you the stitch count. We have 82 stitches along the long sides, and we should have 68 stitches or single crochets along the short ends of this. Now we have 2 more rounds before we majorly change to another stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and start you on this. Again, we're just going to work rows 1 and 2 of the low front ridge, and we're going to chain 1. We're going to slip stitch to that first, or the last stitch actually, along this side. Let's go ahead and move our stitch markers so that we're good to go for round 2. And then again, we're going to skip that chain 2 space, and then we just go on working in the front loop only, working those slip stitches. So let me just give you some information just to talk you through this. If you need to, you can back this up and look at how we did the join down here, but we're basically going to join with a slip stitch to the chain 1 of this round, chain 1, turn, and then we are going to work in the remaining loop. Again, you'll be working in the front loop, but it's actually the back. Just work in the remaining loop as you go around, and making sure that you work those chain 2 corners. Again, if you want, I can just give you a little time marker. You can just back this up and look at this. As we come to the end of round 22, this is the second row of the low front ridge. I've worked my corner with the single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in the chain 2 corner, and we're going to join with a slip stitch to that very first stitch of the round. And let's see where that stitch is, just to confirm. Yes, it's right here, right here. So let's go ahead and join with that slip stitch. Okay, and then we're going to turn. So at the end of this round, let me give you this stitch count. We have 84 stitches along the long side and 70 stitches along the shorter sides. We're now going to begin round 23, and this is where we begin the braided cable. So in order to do that, we need to get away from this corner. So what we're going to do, we're going to work a chain 1, and then we're going to slip stitch and that stitch, and then we're going to slip stitch to the corner. Now the corners are going to be a bit different. I'm going to take the stitch marker out. They're going to be taller and they're going to have more stitches because of the height of the stitches that we're going to work on this round. So now to begin round 23, we're going to chain 2, and this chain is going to count as a double crochet for this particular round. And then we're going to work another double crochet, and then we're going to chain 2, and we're going to do that again. Actually, we're going to work 2 double crochets. All right, just like that. Now we're ready to begin. Now the way we begin this is going to vary depending on whether you're working along the long side or along the short side. When working the long side, and this is specifically for round 23, what we're going to do is we're going to immediately start working the braided cable. Now when we work along the shorter sides, we're going to work 2 double crochets before beginning the braided cable pattern. And this is all because of math. This is all because of the numbers that we're working with, since this stitch is a multiple of 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip the first 2 stitches, and the next 2, you notice I've prepared for a front post treble. We're going to work front post treble around the next 2 stitches. And yes, you can work these around short stitches, just the way I'm doing here. All right, now working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. 1, and this does get easier once we're working with all tall stitches. And then the second stitch is right here. And we're going to front post treble in the next 2 stitches. And this will complete the 6 stitch motif, or the 6 stitch repeat. Okay, and I know that does not look anything like a braid right now, but once we work several more rows, it certainly will. So we're going to work this all the way across until we get to the next chain 2 corner, and I'll show you what to do there. Okay, so I'm going to do the braided cable again. Skip 2, front post treble, that's the tall stitch, in the next 2 stitches, working in front of those last 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. Then we front post treble in the next 2 stitches. Okay, so now we have 2 braids. I'm going to do this one more time, just because I know there's somebody out there who's never seen these kind of cables before. Skip 2 stitches, front post treble
the next 2 stitches. Working in front of those last 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches we just skipped. And then we front post treble in the next 2 stitches. Just like that. So go ahead and work that until you get to the next corner. After working this all the way across the row, you should have come out even on the stitch count. And so now we've come to the chain 2 corner. Let me go ahead and remove my stitch marker. And we are going to work in that chain 2 corner 2 double crochets, chain 2, and then we're going to work 2 more double crochets to form that corner. Now, like I said before, because of the multiples involved along the short side, we're going to work 2 double crochets at the beginning, and then we're going to resume the cabling pattern. So skip 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2, working in front of those last 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches we skipped, and then 2 more front post trebles, one in each of the next 2 stitches. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to work this across the short side, and before you get to that corner, you should have 2 leftover stitches. So we're going to work double crochet, and then in the chain 2 corner, you will work your 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, and then you're going to turn, and then we're working along the long side again, where you just go right into working the braided cable stitch using all the stitches along the side. Okay, so go ahead and work this all the way around, and don't forget when you get to the other short end that you must work 2 double crochets at the beginning and at the end of the way across that side. We come to the end of this round, and as I mentioned before, we worked 2 additional double crochets, and we're going to join to the top of this turning chain right here with a slip stitch, and like I said, this does count as a stitch. Now we're going to slip stitch to the chain 2 corner before turning. We're going to chain 2, and we're going to turn to work with the back side facing. Okay, so after turning, I have that chain 2. This will continue to count as a stitch while we work the braided cable. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work over the 2 stitches that were the corner of the previous round. And the 2 stitches that were not incorporated into a braid. Let's go ahead and work those 2. Okay, so now we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and this is working with the back side facing us. We're going to back post treble in the next 2 stitches. This is also round 2 of the braided cable. Working in front of these 2 stitches as seen from the front side, okay, we're going to work a back post treble here and then here. So I'll go ahead and work the first one, and the second one. Okay, now we have 2 more stitches, these 2. We're just going to work back post trebles around these as well. All right, so let's do this one more time. So we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, back post treble in the next 2 stitches, working in front of these 2 as seen from the front side. Those are the key words there, as seen from the front side. We back post treble in those 2 stitches that we skipped, and then we back post treble in the next 2 stitches. Okay, so go ahead and work this all the way across. Now when you get to the short ends, you're going to work double crochet, double crochet, double crochet, double crochet in those extra stitches, again along the short ends only. And then in the chain 2 corner, 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. So now when you're working the longer sides, we're going to have 2 double crochets at the beginning. Then you're going to work over those 14 braids, just like I showed you, and then you'll have 2 more stitches at the end to make sure again you work the chain 2s in the same way, 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. So go ahead and work round 24. At the end of this round, we're going to join with a slip stitch to that first of the chain 2s. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn to see what we have here. And we can see the braids starting to come out. All right, so now what we're going to do, let's just go ahead and we're going to, let's give it a chain and slip stitch to the corner. Okay, we're going to chain 2 and we're going to make another corner. And again, these chains do count as stitches in this section of the throw as we work the braided cable. And we're going to chain 2 and we're going to work 2 more double crochets. Now we're basically going to continue in the same pattern, repeating these last 2 rounds. Okay. And I'll put across the screen how many repeats you're going to be repeating of these 2 rounds. Now, let me just speak one thing about the number of stitches. As we are adding more stitches in, every time we have a total of 6 stitches, like for example, on the, let's see, is this the short side? Yes, on the short sides of this, you're now going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches. So you can, when we get to the short sides, we're going to start a new braid doing the same thing that we're going to do over the established braids by skipping 2, front post treble in the next 2, working in front of those stitches, front post treble in the 2 we skipped, and then front post treble in the 2 remaining stitches. So at the end of this round, instead of 11 braids on the short sides, we're going to have 13. Okay, we're not going to add any additional on this round, but 2 rounds later, we will have an additional, an available 6 stitches to work a new braided cable. But in the meantime, since we only have 4, so we're just going to work double crochets in those 4 stitches. And then we resume the cable. And I just want to work one of these with you to show you just how easy this is going to be now, because it's so much easier to see. Skip 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, Working in front of those 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped, and then 2 front post treble in the next 2 stitches, hiding a little bit behind those stitches, but you should be able to see them. Okay, so now we see it is looking more and more like a braid. So go ahead and work this round, and remember, when you come to the corners, we're going to work 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. As I come to the end of this round, we're going to join with a slip stitch to that turning chain, just like that. Now we're going to slip stitch to the chain 2 corner. Before I do that, I want to show you how I worked those beginnings of another braided cable over the 6 stitches that were available. Okay, so for the next round, we're going to turn, and you notice that we do have 6 stitches available on the long sides to add a braid on both ends of the long side, bringing the braid count up to 16 for those. All right, so let's go ahead and turn. So the next round is going to start with a chain 2, which is going to count as a stitch, and then we work in the two double crochets that are not part, and also you would work additional stitches if there were additional stitches that are not part of a braid yet. And then we just go into the braided cable with the skip 2, again 2 back post double crochets, and rather than show that to you again, you know how to do that stitch if you've gotten this far, but let me show you what this is going to look like when you get to the long sides. We're going to skip 2 stitches. This is after we work the corner. We will skip these 2. We're going to back post treble in these 2 stitches, working in front, back post treble in these 2, and then back post treble in the next 2 stitches. So you will be using all 6 of those available stitches along the edge. So even though it's the back side facing, you can begin another braided cable along the side. So go ahead and work the 2 braided cable rounds for the specified number of rounds as you see below on the screen, and then I will show you how to discontinue this stitch. Okay, I have worked so far a total of 11 of the braided cable rounds, and let me just show you. I explained this before, but let me just show you what I mean by that. So this is round 1. We're just going to call this round 1 of the braided cable right here where we began, and we had those extra stitches, and like I said, the chain 2s do count as stitches. Now the next round, which is round 2 of the braided cable, we actually had 6 stitches, so we began a new cable. This is the short side of this. Now on the long side, we also we didn't have enough to start a new cable at that point, but on the next round we did. So basically every time you have a total of 6 extra cables, like here 3 rounds later, this would be round 1, 2, 3, 4, round 5 on the short side, we began another cable, and then round 6, round 7, round 8, we began another cable. So you can see them expanding as you go. Okay, on the long side, let's see, let me go ahead and tell you on what rounds these were added. This would be, it's getting a little complicated here with the size. So round 1 would be right here. Round 2, round 3, we added a new cable on the long side. Then we have round 4, round 5, round 6, we added another cable here because we had 6 stitches. Round 7, round 8, round 9, we added another cable on the long side. Then we have round 10 and round 11. Now we're going to work the final round, which is round 12. But first, like we've been doing, we need to slip stitch to the chain 2 corner. I'm going to go ahead and chain 2, and we are going to turn. Now this is going to be a little bit different on this round. As you work on the stitches that are not incorporated into a braided cable, you're going to have, let's see, on the long side you're going to have the corner stitches plus 4 additional stitches here, and you're going to have, this counts as 1 corner stitch on the short side, and you're going to have 6 additional stitches. So when I show you now, make sure you do this for this round. This is the round that discontinues the basket weave. So we are going to use half double crochets worked into these extra stitches. Okay, so there's one there, a little bit thicker because we're working through those slip stitches, and then another one here, 4, 5, and 6. I'll make sure that these are half doubles just on this particular round, and that's because the stitches we're going to work to discontinue this are back post double crochets, not trebles, but back post double crochets. So we're simply going to work back post double crochets over all of these braided cable stitches. Just work them in order as they come. This is going to smooth out our work for the next round, which is going to be some more low front ridge and cabling stitches, just like you've already seen. Okay, so we're going to just work again back post double crochets over all of the braided cables, and when you get to the corner stitches that are not incorporated into any cables, we're going to work half double crochets as we work into the top loops. And when we get to the chain 2 corners, we're going to work 2 half doubles, chain 2, 2 half doubles instead of the double crochets into those corners. Okay, and you'll see that this is going to smooth out any waviness or bumpiness from working these braided cables. So let's take a look at the braided cable section. All right, so now after this, we're going to review. We're going to do something we've already done. We're going to go back and we're going to work 2 rounds of the low front ridge again, 2 rounds of the cable stitch, and then 2 rounds of the low front ridge once again. Okay, and if you want to look across the bottom, I'll tell you how many cables will be across the short side, and then the second number will be how many cables are across the long side of the throw, just in case you needed to know that information. All right, so go ahead and work the next 6 rows, which would be rows 1 and 2 of the low front ridge, 1 and 2 of the cable stitch, and then 1 and 2 again of the low front ridge. So go ahead and work those, and then I will show you a new stitch after that. This is what you should have after completing 40 rounds. Let me go ahead and give you some numbers. On the short side, you should have a total of 39 cables. On the long side, you should have a total of 44 cables. All right. Okay, now we are ready to begin the rounds with the arrow stitch, but before we do that, let me just clarify some stitch counts for you up until this point. For rounds 37 and 38, which were the cable rounds, you should have at the end of round 38 39 cables on the short side, 44 cables on the long sides, and a total of 123 stitches on the short side, 137 stitches on the long side when you work the second row of the cable. After completing rounds 39 and 40 of the low front ridge, you should have a total of 125 stitches on the short side, 139 stitches on the long side. So I've gone ahead and I've slip stitched to my corner as we begin the arrow round. I'm going to chain 2 because this is a taller stitch, so this chain 2. Now if you want to make it a chain 3 and you're more comfortable with that, you certainly can, but I like the chain 2s, and this will count as a stitch in these rounds. So we have 1 stitch there, which is serving as a double crochet, and then a second double crochet, chain 2, and we're going to do 2 more double crochets worked into that chain 2 space. So now let me just clarify something. When working along the long sides, go ahead and work a double crochet in that first stitch. Okay, this is not a part of the arrow stitch. And again, this just has to do with the math and everything and the way that this works itself out. When you work along the short ends, you will not have to make a stitch in that first stitch. Okay, and once we work across the end of this row, you're going to have 2 extra stitches at the end. Just simply work double crochets in those stitches before the corner. All right, so let's go ahead and work this stitch. Skip the first 3 stitches. We're going to treble crochet in that next stitch. Now working behind the treble crochet, we're going to work double crochets in each of these stitches that we just skipped. Just like that. So we are going to have half of the arrow at the end of this round and then work the other half, giving it the arrow shape once we work the next round. Now we're going to skip the next 3 stitches. Front post treble in the next stitch, working behind that treble, work double crochets in each of those 3 stitches we skipped. I'm stating the obvious here, but again, this is the long stitch, the treble stitch, and then the shorter double crochets worked behind that treble stitch. Let me do this for you one more time. Skip the next 3 stitches, treble crochet into that next stitch, working behind that treble crochet, double crochet in each. Let's make sure I get the hook in the right place. Each of those stitches behind the treble crochet. So work this again along the long side. You will have approximately 2 stitches, and if you have an extra stitch, don't worry about it too much. There should be about 2 stitches at the end of this before you get to the chain 2 corner. When you get to the chain 2 corner, work 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, and then immediately go into the arrow stitch. Okay, as you work the other side, you may have 1 extra stitch on the short side that you have to fill in before the corner, but go ahead and work this around, and I will show you the connection at the end of the round. At the end of round 41, which is also round 1 of the arrow, we're going to join with a slip stitch to that chain 2. So now we're going to slip stitch our way to the corner once again. Now before I do the chain, let me just state that we're going to have 1, 2, 3 stitches to work double crochets in that are not part of the arrow. So wherever you have the extra double crochets, like for example you have 3 on this side as well, make sure that you work double crochets in those spaces. All right, so let's go ahead and turn, and this round will have the back side facing us. Okay, so we're going to chain 2, and again this does count as one of those double crochets in the chain 2 corner. And like I said, we had 3 stitches. It might be a little bulky, again, working through with the slip stitches, but just go ahead and work over that. It really will not be a problem, and it's not going to show when we finish this project. All right, so I have those 3 stitches. Now we begin our arrow stitch row, or rather round 2. We're going to skip those 3 stitches, those 3 double crochets, and we're going to work a treble, and this should be the same place where that treble crochet was worked the last round. Now working in front of that treble, we're going to double crochet in each of those stitches that we skipped. Alright, so that is an arrow completed. So let me go ahead and do the next one for you. Skip the next 3 stitches, treble crochet in that next stitch, and again it's the same stitch where this treble was. It's the same top loops as that one. And then double crochet working in front of this stitch because the texture is facing away from us. We work double crochets in each of those 3 stitches that we had just skipped. Alright, so let's stop and take a look. This is what it looks like from the back side. When we turn it around, we see the arrow, so we can see the direction of the arrow. And I love adding this particular design to this throw because Jesus says in the scriptures, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. He's pointing to himself. As he is the way, he is directionally the way. So I wanted to include the arrows to symbolically represent that as well. So go ahead and work this all the way around. Again, the back side will be facing. When you get to the chain 2 corners, we're going to do the 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, and I will show you how this works out and connects up at the end of the round. After working this all the way around, I've come to the chain 2 corner. I've worked 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 1 double crochet, and I'm going to join to the chain 2, which again serves as a double crochet. So let's go ahead and turn, and we can see the beautiful arrows. Alright, so now we're going to chain 1, and we're going to slip stitch our way to the chain 2 corner. Now we're going to work a round of just single crochets. And so in order to do that, we're going to start with the corner, which is the single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, just 1 at this time, and then just work single crochets into each stitch all the way around. When you get to the chain 2 corners, work a single crochet, chain 2 single crochets in the corner. At the end of this round, we're going to join with a slip stitch to the first stitch of the round. Go ahead and slip stitch to that chain 2 corner. We're going to chain 1, and we are going to turn. So after we work this round that I'm going to show you, we're just going to end by working the chain 2 corner. Okay, so now we want to be careful. We're going to be working single crochets going the other direction. We have one stitch here. Actually, we can just use these loops for that stitch. 1, 2. Just make sure that you don't add an extra stitch in here with the chain 1, or rather the slip stitch. So we're going to work 1, 2. Go ahead and work single crochets all the way around. And just like we've been doing, when you get to the chain 2 corner, work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. After working the single crochets all the way around for the second time, we're going to work the corner in that last chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and then join with a slip stitch to that first stitch of the round. Let's go ahead and turn and take a look at our progress. Okay, after turning, this is what you should have after working the 2 rounds of the arrows and then 2 additional rounds of the single crochet. Now I'm going to give you a large assignment, and I'll get back to you on the numbers. We're going to go back and we're going to work 2 rounds of the low front ridge, or work round 1 and round 2 of the low front ridge, round 1 and round 2 of the cable stitch, and then round 1 and round 2 again of the low front ridge, so that we have this section framing on this other side as well. I'm going to go ahead and just get you started on this low front ridge because I know it can be a little tricky. We're going to chain 1. Go ahead and slip stitch in that first stitch. We're going to skip the corner, and let's go ahead and be sure that we have all of our corners marked with a stitch marker or stitch holder, because it's going to help greatly on round 2. And then again, we just working in the front loop only, continue with those slip stitch all the way around for round 1 of that low front ridge. So should you need stitch support on how to do this, again, I'll go ahead and put a time mark right across the bottom of the screen for rounds 35 through 40. Just keep in mind that the number of cables will be a little bit different, and I'll put right across the bottom how many cables, I'll put it right there now, how many cables you should have on the short and the long sides for those rounds. So go ahead and complete those next 6 rounds. This is what you should have after completing 50 rounds. Now we ended the last round with the low front ridge. Now before I give you the next directions, let me give you the stitch count. You should have 144 stitches along the short edges and 158 along the long edges. So we're going to go ahead and begin round 51 with a chain. We're going to slip stitch our way to the chain 2 corner, chain 2. Again, this stitch does count as a double crochet, and then we're going to work a double crochet, chain 2, and we're going to turn 90 degrees to work along the long side. We're going to work 2 more double crochets into that corner, and let's go ahead and take the time to move our stitch marker. There we go. That's just a great reminder to have in case we get confused. Okay, now I'm going to give you slightly different directions for whether you're working along the long side or the short side. If you're working along the short side, I'm just going to have you just begin the Celtic weave. All right, that's for the short side because you have 144 stitches, which is a multiple of 4. You don't have to add any extras in. Now along the long side you have 158 stitches, so you're going to have 2 stitches extra. So that to distribute those evenly, we're going to work a double crochet in the first and the last stitch along the long edges. Okay, so now we're going to begin the Celtic weave, and the way we do this is we're going to skip 2 stitches, and then working around the body of the next stitch, we're going to work a front post treble crochet, and in the next stitch as well. So we're working 2 front post trebles. And just for the record, I will have a video in the video description below that will show you another stitch where you can watch the Celtic weave in case this is the first time you're seeing this. Now continuing on with the stitch, working in front of those last 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. Round 1 rather is pretty straightforward. All right, so let's go ahead and do this a couple more times for you. Skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches. This is the tall stitch, remember. And working in front of those 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble into the 2 stitches that we just skipped. Let's do that one more time. Skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches. That's 1 and 2. And then working in front of those 2 stitches, front post treble in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. Okay, so you're going to get these 4-stitch cable crosses all the way around. When you get to the chain 2 corner, remember again, I'm repeating myself, along the long sides you're going to have 1 extra double crochet, and then we work the chain 2 corner. You'll work 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, and then when you're working along the short side, you just start right into the skip 2, front post treble, etc. of the Celtic weave. So you don't need to work any extra stitches along the shorter sides of this project. So go ahead and work this around, and I'll show you the connection, and we'll go on to round 2 of the Celtic weave, which will be round 52. So this is round 51, and go ahead and do that, and then we'll continue on. At the end of this round, we're going to join with a slip stitch to that first stitch, which is the chain 2, which again doubles as a double crochet. Okay, just like that. And I'll give you those stitch counts once again. Across the short sides, you should have 36 of these cable crosses, and across the long side, you should have 39 of the cable crosses. That does not include the chain 2s, or actually chain 2 corners, which we'll have 4 additional stitches in each of those corners, and along the long side, you'll have the 4 additional, 2 stitches in each corner, plus 1 stitch at the beginning and at the end of the row. Now to begin round 52, we're going to go ahead and slip stitch our way to that chain 2 corner, and we are going to turn this entire thing around. So after turning, we're going to go ahead and chain 2. So let me go ahead and just do this with you, and you're going to want to be careful to do this for all the corners. Okay, so we're going to work back post treble crochets in those first 2 stitches, and then now working in front of these 2 as seen from this side, we're going to come around, and hopefully you can see, we're going to work these 2 stitches, working back post treble crochets around these stitches, and then the second one right here. Okay, that's probably the most complicated part of working this. Now going across the sides, we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, which are these 2, and then the 2 stitches here that are on top, we're going to work those next. Again, this is all back post treble crochets in this row. Now working in front of these 2 stitches as seen from the side, the front side, we're going to work the 2 stitches that we skipped, and you can use your thumb and tall man finger to find these stitches and help to guide your hook. So that's 1, and let's do this again. All right, let me do this for you one more time, and then I'm going to have you work across the row, but I'll be sure to show you how this links in to the corner. So let's go ahead and work this one more time. Skip the next 2 stitches. I'm going to back post treble, and the next 2 stitches. Working in front of these 2 stitches as seen from the front side. I'm actually going to find these 2 stitches right here, but when you're looking at it this way, you can see my finger and thumb have located these 2 stitches, and there we go. So take this nice and slow at first so that you can locate the stitches properly. It can be a little bit of a stinker of a stitch to learn at first. Just know that people have struggled with this, but once you get it and once you understand the stitch, I think you're going to like it. So let's take a look, and we'll see what this looks like from the front side. So this is what it should look like from the front side. All right, so go ahead and work across that side, and I'll show you how to handle the next corner. I've come to the next corner, and let me just show you what we're going to do. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and then we're going to back post treble rather over these 2 stitches, just like this. So thereby bringing these 2 stitches into the Celtic weave, okay? And then we're going to work in front of these 2 as seen from the front side, and we're going to back post treble around the 2 that we just skipped. Again, make sure that as you complete these stitches that it is on the front side, okay, that they're not, you know, somehow mixed up and showing on the back side. All right, so once we've done that, let's go and take out our stitch marker. Not going to need those so much. So then we're going to work 2 double crochets in this chain 2 corner, chain 2, and 2 more double crochets. All right, just like that. Let me show you how this looks from the front side. I'll give you a better view of that in just a minute. Okay, so now going forward, we have 3 stitches here. This is along both the beginning and the end of these rows, 2 stitches from the chain 2 corner and that 1 extra stitch. So what we're going to do is we're going to double crochet in 1 of those double crochets. Then we're going to skip these 2 and then begin the Celtic weave again. Okay, back post treble in each of those next 2 stitches, and then working in front of those as seen from the front side, we're going to work a back post treble here and then here. So I'm going to flip this up so you can see the back side like this, and then the next one just like that. All right, and then we return once again to the Celtic weave, skip 2, back post treble in the next 2, etc. Now when you get to the end of this row, let me go ahead and show it to you. It's not really the end of the row, it's really the end of working this side. We're going to work these 2. We're going to work these 2 as it's into the Celtic weave by working 2 back post treble and then 2 back post treble over these 2 stitches afterwards, and then you're going to have 1 double crochet to work in here by itself, and then 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochets for those corners. And when you go again to work along the short sides, you're not going to have to skip anything, or you're not going to have to work in any extra stitches. You're just going to skip 2 stitches and immediately go into the Celtic weave by working these 2 stitches and then these 2. I hope that's not too much information or too confusing, but just maintain that and complete that all the way around. After working this all the way around, I've come to the chain 2 corner. I've worked 2 double crochets, chain 2, 1 double crochet, and then we're going to join with a slip stitch to the top chain of that chain 2, which acts as that second double crochet. This is what it looks like from the back side, and again I'm focusing mostly on the Celtic weave right now. So let's go ahead and turn and look at the front side. So this is what this should look like at this point. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are just going to continue working the Celtic weave, and looked across the bottom of the screen. I'll tell you how many rows, or rounds rather, we are going to work on this. So I'm going to chain 1, I'm going to slip stitch my way to the chain 2 corner, and this is how you'll begin these rounds. Now we're going to repeat as we go around. We're going to repeat these last 2 rounds, which is round 51 and 52. And as you go around, whenever you get joining in the extra stitches, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second, we're going to use these extra stitches here in multiples of 2. So let me go ahead and chain 2 to begin the 3rd round of the Celtic weave. This is actually also round 53. So I'm going to work the chain 2, and I've worked 1 double crochet. I'm going to chain 2, 2 more double crochets in that chain 2 space. Okay, now we're going to continue on. So we're going to add these 2 stitches into the Celtic weave with these 2 stitches. So we do have 1 extra stitch here. And again, this is along the long side. You will not have that extra stitch along the short sides. So work a double crochet in that first stitch. And now we begin the Celtic weave. Skip 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, working in front of those last 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we're incorporating into the Celtic weave. Okay, just like that. And I'm going to just do one more for you, and I'll show you what this looks like. So we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, which are hiding behind these stitches. And if you're not sure, you can just count the loops on top, the like V's that are on the top of the stitches. So skip these 2, and then front post treble in the next 2. And then working in front of these 2, we're going to front post treble in these 2. You may have to use your thumb and tall man finger. Use the nerve endings in these fingers to find these stitches, and your fingers can help with this a lot. Okay. Let me do that for you one more time, because I know there's somebody out there that hasn't seen this stitch before. Skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, working in front of those 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble in this stitch and then this stitch. Again, using your thumb and finger to locate these for you and help guide that hook. That really makes it a lot easier. Okay, so go ahead and work those Celtic weave rounds. So I'm now finishing up my 7th round of the Celtic weave, join with a slip stitch, and I'm going to slip stitch my way to the chain 2 corner, just like we've been doing. And let's go ahead and pause and take a look at this. Probably be easier to show you the other side, and it is a little bit curly. I just wanted to share that to you as well. Don't worry about that at all, because the next round we're going to work is going to take a lot of that out, and as well as the rounds that we work following this next round. Let me add one other thought to this. If you still would like your throw to be larger than it is at this point, if you can simply add additional Celtic weave rounds. You may have to rework the last trim round a bit, but you could probably do that if you've gotten this far in the project. But I just want to let you know, if you decided to make this larger, you're definitely going to need more yarn. Probably an average of 1 extra ball of the yarn that I am recommending for each additional round that you add with the Celtic weave. In case you haven't noticed, that is kind of a yarn eater stitch, but I just love it so much. All right, so now we're going to turn, and this is the 8th row of the Celtic weave. It's also called the row to discontinue the Celtic weave. I'm going to go ahead and start with a chain 2 that again serves as a stitch in our stitch count. And what we're going to do is we're going to work half double crochets in any standing stitches that we crochet into, and that's just so that it equals the height of the stitch that we're going to work to discontinue this. Okay, so we've worked half double crochets in those first 2 stitches, and again, in every single crochet, in every stitch that is worked that is apart from the Celtic weave, we're going to work half doubles throughout this round. So, but when working over the Celtic weave itself, we're going to work back, post, double crochets. Okay, and I'm going to work this cluster of 4 stitches with you so that you know what this looks like. Okay, so and what this round is going to do is going to smooth out the stitch so that we can go forward with the finishing rounds. So go ahead and work this all the way around, and just like we've been doing, when you get to the chain 2 corner, instead of the double crochets, work 2 half double crochets, chain 2, and 2 half double crochets, and I'll finish up this corner with you once we finish this round. At the end of this round, we've worked 2 half double crochets into the chain 2 corner and chained 2, and let's add 1 more half double crochet, and then we're going to join with a slip stitch to that chain 2, which again serves as another stitch. And let's go ahead and turn. Take a look at this. So you see how that row really evens out the stitches. Okay, so now the next 2 rounds with the front side facing, we're going to start with the chain 1, and we are going to work the 2 rounds of the low front ridge. These are stitches that we've done several times already. So we start with that first slip stitch in that first stitch. We're going to skip the chain 2 corner, and let's go ahead and be faithful to mark those chain 2 corners with stitch markers or some way so that you will know that they are there. And let's hold that off there. And then again, just working in the front loop only, we work slip stitches all the way around, and so you get that nice little ridge. And then at the end, let me just talk you through this so you don't have to go back. And just like you have on previous rounds, we're going to join with a slip stitch to the chain 1 space, and then we're going to chain 1, turn, and then we're going to work single crochets in the remaining loop from that last post row that we worked. Okay, so go ahead and work rows 1 and 2 of the low front ridge. As I finish the second round of the low front ridge, I'm going to join with a slip stitch. So now after joining with a slip stitch at the end of that low front ridge round 2, we're going to turn, and we're not going to chain 1. We're just going to leave the yarn in front like this and go ahead and slip stitch to the chain 2 corner. This is a little bit of an awkward transition, but I really want the back side to be facing as you work this next round, and it's just going to minimize the yarn in this space. So we'll go ahead and turn, and this is to begin round number 61, which I'm calling crown row 1. Go ahead and chain 1. Okay, so now we're going to begin working the crown border. So, but before we do that, I need to be clear about some things. This is a stitch that is worked as a multiple of 8 stitches as it's worked across the round or across each side. Now, the short sides are going to have 22 crowns, and you're going to have to start with a single crochet that is not a part of that. In other words, there are 2 extra stitches that will not be part of the crown. So we're going to go ahead and start with one of those. Go ahead and put the first one right here, which is in that first single crochet, and then we're going to begin the crown. When you get to the end of the short side, you will have 1 extra single crochet to work before you work the corners. Okay, so these are stitches that are not included in the corners. When you work along the long sides of the throw, you will have 24 crowns, and this comes out evenly, so you don't have to add any stitches at the beginning or at the end along the side. I hope that's clear. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to begin by working a single crochet in that first stitch. So after that first stitch, we're going to start working the crown. We're going to work a single crochet in that next stitch. We're going to skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and in the next stitch, we're going to work treble crochet clusters, and I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to work by working a treble. We're going to complete that until we have one more step. We're going to keep one loop on our hook. Wrap the hook twice again, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and then we're going to do that one more time. Wrap the hook twice, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. You should have 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 4 strands. Then we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to do that again in the same space. It's 1, 2, 3, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops on the hook, and then once again chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then again in the same space we're going to work another treble cluster. Okay, 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 4, skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and single crochet in the next space. So it's going to look like this from the back side. From the front side, it's going to look like this. It doesn't look like a lot right now, but when we work the final round, this is really going to stand out, and I think going to be a very beautiful trim for this throw, and a very appropriate one as well. I'll do this for you one more time. Skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then work 3 or the treble crochet cluster. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then another treble crochet cluster. Yarn over, pull through all 4 loops, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and another treble crochet cluster. That's 2. So we have 3 of those trebles, but I've held back 1 loop on each. Yarn over, pull through all 4 loops on the hook, skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then single crochet in that next stitch. So go ahead and work that across the side, and I will show you how to, how this ends at the corner, and then how to begin the long side of the throws. I have worked this all the way around, and just to let you know that when you are working along the long sides, not the short sides, but the long sides, you're going to skip those last 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then the next stitch is also going to be part of the corner. So I just wanted to make that clear, and that goes for both of the long sides. All right, so now we're going to do a chain 2 and put another single crochet in that chain 2 corner. I'm going to go ahead and remove our stitch marker. All right, so now we're going to join with a slip stitch to that first stitch of the round. After joining with a slip stitch, we're going to chain 1 and turn. And since this is the last round, we're not going to worry about slip stitching to that corner to begin. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to just start in the first stitch, which is one of those corner single crochets with a single crochet, and then when we get to the chain 2, we're going to work a single crochet, chain 2, and a single crochet. Now we are going to work to make the clusters look like crowns. So this is what you're going to do for each of these crowns. We're going to work a single crochet in that first single crochet. We're going to skip this stitch, which is the top of the treble crochet cluster, and then we're going to work 4 single crochets into the chain 3 space, just like that. Now when you get to the top of the center treble cluster, we're going to work a single crochet. We're going to chain 3. We're going to work a slip stitch into that first chain to make a picot, and then another single crochet into the same space, so it makes a little top for our crown. And then working in the chain 3 space, we're going to work 4 single crochets. We're going to skip the top of the next treble cluster, and then we're going to work in that next single crochet. And this is what that should look like. So let's go ahead and do the next one. I want to just review that with you. Skip the next treble cluster and working in the chain space, work 4 single crochets, and working in the top of the treble cluster, we work a single crochet, chain 3, a slip stitch in that first of those chain 3s, and then another single crochet, and then we work 4 single crochets in that next chain 3, skip the next space or the top of that next treble cluster, and then single crochet in the next single crochet. And so this is what it should look like after you have 2. So you can see that does much more look like a crown. I think this is going to be a lovely border to finish this project. All right, we'll go ahead and work that all the way around. When you get to the corners, you're just going to work single crochets in any extra single crochets that are not related to the crown clusters. And when you get to the corner, it's single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in the chain 2 space. So go ahead and work this all the way around. And when you are finished, we're going to join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet of the round, fasten off, and hide all of these loose ends. I know of which there will be many. So now I am in the process of blocking my throw, and let me go ahead and show you what I'm doing and what I'm using. I'm using these blocking combs that are rust proof, and I'll have information in the video description about them. I'll let you look at the box here. This brand may no longer be available in this format, but there are many others on the market, and I'll make sure there's a link there for you. These combs come in the small size, as I showed you, as well as the large size. And they also come with these T-pins. So let me show you, because I have used quite a few of these. These are nice little pins. And actually, if you don't want to invest in a set of blocking combs, you can just use these pins. But and these come in particularly helpful for points on projects. But if you can use the combs instead, they're much easier to deal with, and you don't have to worry about somebody stepping on one of these. So you do want to be very careful with that. And I'm also using these foam blocks, which have they are self-healing, which means when you stick the pins in and then pull them back out,
the holes disappear. They don't remain there forever. You can see where I've used this in the past, but the holes kind of seal back up. So let me go ahead and give you another view of this. I did take a particular care to block the center part of the throw, having displaying the 3 crosses. And again, I just have this as flat as I can, and I try to square up the edges so that they don't look, too rounded. So the next thing I'm going to do is get a bottle, and I just recovered a bottle from my laundry room, emptied it out, and made sure it was absolutely clean, filled it with water. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to lightly spray the entire throw, just with water, until it is damp, not soaking wet, but just a little bit damp. And then I'm going to let this dry overnight, and this should be good to go in the morning. I should be able to remove it from the blocking mats, and it should be ready for photography. Well, I hope you enjoyed making this throw on a hill far away with me today. If you did, I would love to hear from you. Please post in the comments section below. God bless. Bye-bye.